Ya tengo. Bueno, buen día.
So good morning, everyone. Okay, Satish, June, and Ty. Sorry. Do you hear me, Satish? No, ninguno se ha puesto los cascos. So good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It will also be an intense day today. There's a change to the program. Instead of beginning with César, we will start with Joan. And we will listen to César after Joan at about 10:15. And at about 11 or quarter to 11, we're going to have a DJ who will do a little music show outside. And I encourage you all to enjoy the dancing. If it's raining, then we'll try to do it inside, but we'll see. We'll go with the flow. And he will explain about his musical story. So we'll start with meditation with Satish.
Welcome to a short meditation. To begin the meditation, we bring our both palms together as a symbol of humility and unity. Then we bow to this sacred universe, sacred earth, sacred life. Then put your both hands on your knees, palms up, and make a circle with the index finger and the thumb. This circle represents the cycle of time and the cycle of life. And also, the circle, mandala, symbolizes the sun, the moon, the earth, and ourselves. And we are all related. We are all connected. And the thumb is connected with the index finger. The three remaining fingers stay straight, representing the past, the present, and the future simultaneously. And also as a symbol of many beautiful, inspiring trinities, such as truth, goodness, and beauty. So just put your focus on one finger, truth, second finger, goodness, third finger, beauty. Truth, goodness, and beauty. Another symbol to remind us, soil, one finger, soul, second finger, society, third finger. To meditate is to pay attention. So first of all, we pay attention to our body posture. Just observe the posture. Still and silent body. And relaxed body. Relax your whole body. Shoulders, arms, legs, the back, the neck, the head, the forehead, the eyes, the cheeks, the lips, all relaxed. Feel at home in your body. And then, in this still and silent body, there are two movements, one of the mind and the other of the breath. We bring those two together and focus the mind on the breath. Breathing in, quietly say, I'm breathing in. Breathing out, quietly say, I'm breathing out. Thus, the focus is on the breath. No other thoughts, no other worries. Simply breathing in, breathing out with total presence of the mind. And as we breathe in and out mindfully, we are aware that all of us in this great hall are breathing the same breath of life. Thus, we are all related. We are all connected. Like the thumb is connected with the index finger. With that sense of unity of all life, we focus on our breath. Feel the breath. Breathing in, we smile. Breathing out, we relax and let go. And as we breathe mindfully, we are also aware that all living beings upon this earth, humans and other than humans, are sustained by the same breath of life which we breathe. Thus, we are all related. We are all connected. Like the thumb is connected with the index finger. With that sense of unity of all life, we breathe mindfully in a totally relaxed body and a calm mind. No other thoughts, no worries, just breathing and being at home in your body. Totally relaxed, totally calm. Breathing in, we smile. Breathing out, we relax and let go. The mantra Om is the mantra of wholeness, completeness, and relatedness. So we sing the mantra 3 times together. Breathe in. Om. And bring your attention to your breath. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe. Peace, peace, peace. May all beings upon this earth, humans and other than humans, live in peace, find fulfillment and self-realization. And as we breathe mindfully, we seek truth, love, compassion, unity, beauty, and generosity in our lives. And as we breathe mindfully in our relaxed body and calm mind, we offer all our thoughts, all our words, and all our actions for the well-being of all, for the well-being of all, for the well-being of all. And we breathe mindfully. Breathing in, we smile. Breathing out, we relax and let go. And may we think our thoughts, speak our words, and perform our actions mindfully and heartfully throughout the day. Then there is no distinction between meditation and living. Meditation is a mindful way of living. All day meditation, all life meditation. To conclude this meditation, we bring our both palms together again and we bow to the sacred earth, sacred life, sacred universe. And in gratitude for all the gifts of life that we receive every day. And we hold our palms together as a realization that all opposites complement and make whole, left and right, below and above, masculine and feminine, dark and light, pain and pleasure, positive and negative, all opposites complement and make whole. With that sense of wholeness, completeness, and relatedness, we conclude this session of meditation. Thank you.
Joan espera que no se sent. I
Bon dia. Em sentiu ara? Sí.
tu pots anar amb aquest.
Amb aquest, no? Sí. Així? Sí? Millor així, no? Molt bé. Bon dia, estava dient.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here again. It's an effort. It's an effort to come, I know that. My contribution is meant to be like a voyage through the thoughts of very wise people and thus see some of the shadows in our educational system, and the second part in which I would like to bring some light to the situation. Can you hear me, June? Yes? Okay. So we will start by seeing the world that we're starting to live in, which is a completely post-natural world. Many people's dream is actually to live in some kind of hub, kind of Dubai-style, artificial lifestyle. And forgetting the pristine natural world that older people of older generations like us enjoy. This hypermodernity is substituting the natural world, and the young people are aspiring to this more and more. So talking about teaching, I ask myself, why am I a teacher? Just to get a salary for the end of the month to sustain my own way of life? Well, no, actually, the reasons why we become teachers should be central. We're not just civil servants, but we're teachers. And I would like to be a teacher who can inspire young people, inspire them into doing stuff. And this is something that really should inspire us all the way through our teaching career. Many people, though, around the world don't even reach the educational system. They are not able to even go to school. And there's people who are dying to go to school because they feel that going there will help them reach other people and will then improve the future of humanity. This post-natural world that is being created should inspire us to help, as teachers, to help children understand the true nature of things so that they may help other people too. So the question should be, what kind of school do we need for the new geological phase? The first person I would like to introduce you to is Martha Nussbaum. She works in a university in philosophy of law, and she works without earning money because she feels that that's what needs to be done. There is a crisis happening that is almost going by inadvertently. It's a much worse crisis than cancer. It can be much more damaging to the future of democracy. It's the world crisis in the area of education. These are her words. And why does she say that? Because as Banksy, who's one of the biggest, the famous graffiti artists around the world, we are being forbidden from dreaming in this world. And so Marta introduces this debate about the world crisis in education, and says that she's concerned that other fundamental qualities, science and technology, at the service of financial capital, wants us to be robots that can be used at any point. Beyond that, we run the risk of these capacities being forgotten in the toing and froing of communities. It is something that is essential to the health of any democracy and an international society. We need to be able to face the problems of the world with these skills, and these skills allow humans to develop a thinking that allows us to be citizens of the world. It also has to do with the capacity to imagine with compassion the realities of other people. Martha is obsessed with the fact that education is fundamental in rethinking, from the point of view of education, what humans are. And in fact, what we are non-economical human beings. And this is an introduction into what I would like to explain next. If we have our feet on the ground, this translates into pressure for our schools to cooperate, for example, in collaborative economies, for example, with banks. So, for example, there's a prize that's being awarded to encourage entrepreneurial attitudes in young people. And it comes from a bank. And this is like the capitalist illusion, is for the student to be an entrepreneur, because we don't know where we're going to work in the future. We need to be prepared for this future that's coming. This is the illusion of capitalism, that the isolated individual can be educated and available at any point to be used in any work situation with any salary. And this is being introduced in the schools in a very clever way. They even give prizes with public cooperation, so state cooperation, of a program that is to accelerate ideas, and they end up with prizes as amazing as this, or as surprising as this. Virtual health in the campus of the Balearic University. So it's all about virtual life. The research, the work, the prize, it's all virtual. This is collapsing our educational system from the point of view that they say, well, it doesn't work, so let's encourage people, entrepreneurs. Another point is that it turns the teacher into a collaborator. They bombard us with words that are beautiful in themselves: innovation, knowledge, participation, networks. We're bombarded with trainings and activities for us to reflect on how we do our work, because we need to help our students to act differently, because the reality has changed and they will have to be working in networks, collaboratively. And somebody was saying, I try, but people are not up for this. So they want teachers to develop this kind of thinking. And the model they're presenting is this. This is a caricature that I think is very representative, which is that we need to be committed, tolerant. We need to tell stories. We need to be freakies of the new technology, or techie people. I'm a bit of a freak myself, but this is the ideal that we're being led towards, that a good teacher should go in this direction. At a human level, that means that we will not be working for more than 10 years before we burn out, because research shows that teachers after 10 years are burnt out. They start to go to therapy. They want to perhaps change careers because they can no longer take these classes where there's so much conflict and difficulty. So we're overwhelmed as teachers with all of this. We have to deal with functions that we're not prepared for. And we have to go through all of this, and we're surrounded by experts who tell us how we should do it, mediators, analyzers, the universities analyzers to see if we do it well. We have ecologists and all kinds of technical and auxiliary personnel to help us do things properly without breaking down completely.
This has consequences, this collaboration with neoliberalism, and these teachers that need to do everything always feel that they're not up at the task. With this crisis of 2008, so after this 2008 crisis, there have been displacements. Since there are less jobs for teachers, many became freelancers. So they stopped having a stable job. Self-freelancers means that they have to work whenever they get a job. And these teachers, this has another side. There's another side to this. As the educational reform progresses in the different regions, in places like in Catalonia, many schools have the capacity to decide what jobs are created. So what happens is that teachers have to remain silent because they are afraid that their jobs will be lost. And that way, the managing level is able to create subservient teachers, and teachers are exchangeable. They're just someone who offers services to the centers. There are exceptions, of course. There are some managers, there's some managing levels in some centers where it's not the managing level who decides what positions are going to be created, but the regional government. Here we have a joke of El Roto, an illustrator. It says, there are many natures, but at the end of the day, what they want us is to be able to put up with the bars. We have this student who is totally closeted and trapped, but he has free Wi-Fi. So as long as you have Wi-Fi, you have to be happy. There is no investment done in education. There's a movement in Menorca that has tried to change the educational model in the islands. And their research shows us that in the Balearic Islands, regardless of who's in government, the level of investment is ridiculous. It's below the Spanish level and below the European level. We're very cheap for the government, for the national government, because there's no interest in investing in students, in teachers, and in the educational level in general. The final outcome can be reflected in figures, because people talk, and figures are important. Sometimes we need to see the figures about where we are at in the Balearic Islands. Here we have the figures for the different educational level. We have the lowest level of students who make it to the secondary, to university level. We are below the Spanish average. So we have a system that yields this type of higher educational results. And we have the highest figures of dropout rates. When it comes to primary level until 17, very few students finish high school, and the number of students who make it to university is very low. And when we see that type of jobs that are created in the Balearic Islands, we see that it makes sense. None of the 25 more sought-after jobs in the Balearic Islands requires university education. What they want is zombies. There's a zombie party in the Balearic Islands, and that's kind of like the wavelength. They want to produce zombies. They want to turn our young people into zombies. The figures are there. They can be checked, and progress is being made so that young people stop having critical thought. It is expected that young people can migrate at any time to make just very little money somewhere else. This is a very rough and crude situation, the one we have. We can see an image here. Some people get pissed off. For example, in the boy in this ad has a banner saying, "We want to be engineers, not to serve coffees in London." And sometimes parents say, well, you have to, if you need to migrate, just migrate. You have to do whatever it takes. But the young people are saying, hey, we studied a lot. We don't want to have to migrate to London to work in a coffee shop. We can say that this could be referred to as the end of the European dream. There was this European dream that by which if you study, you can have a decent living. There's a group that created a small short film called Lost Generation. I think it's worth to watch this film called the Lost Generation.
Mi nombre es Benjamín Villegas.
My name is Benjamín Villegas, and I was born in a small village in the outskirts of Barcelona in 1982. Pablo Rosso was the best soccer player in the world. Mayra Gomez Kem was a TV star, and he was the leader of the free world. Now, Leo Messi is the best soccer player. This is the TV star, and this is the maximum representative of the world power. This is the man I was promised I would be. And this is the man I am. And I belong to the lost generation. I was born in a working-class family. It was composed of a couple of migrants from Andalusia. My father was a comic reader, and my mother was a secretary. I played with many toys that would be considered toxic now. We watched films like MacGyver, or programs like MacGyver, and films like this, and we trusted that no matter how poorly things seem to be, the ending will be happy. We were told that we were the best prepared generation. We were to be invincible. We just had to work hard, be honest, and find our half orange. We would get married at the age of 25, and we'd have a house, 2 children, a dog, and we'd be happy forever after. We blew the candles every year. We studied a lot. We went to university. We went honest, and the outcome was a whole bunch of shit like the educational reform, corruption, unemployment, and no living happily forever after. We are the only generation who had to deal with 3 crises: the crisis of the 30 years, the values crisis, and the economic crisis. We were told that lying wouldn't be positive, and that's bullshit. There is a whole list of corrupt politicians who are doing really, really well. We just wanted to fulfill our dreams and become astronauts, sports players, athletes, actors, or like I did, I wanted to be a musician. I started working and studying when I was 17, and I am on the verge of unemployment without a house, dogs, or a wife. Well, I do have a dog. This is the story of the lost generation, a generation that they wanted to destroy, but that will keep looking for that happy ending.
Sí, el vídeo ja veieu que és molt graciós, dura 2 minuts i cosa.
This is a very short video. It's only 2 minutes long. But the interesting part is that it's people who are unemployed who made this video, people who had a vital project. And this video shows a great creativity, a creativity that we see in our schoolrooms, people who could do extraordinary things. But the life project that was promised to them, and they had this progressive dream that if you studied hard, you would make it. This doesn't apply anymore. Okay, let's turn the page. We're talking about the shadows, and we're going to move to the light. There is a sentence by George Orwell, who really knew Catalonia and Spain. George Orwell came to Spain during the Civil War. He wrote a book on it, on his experience, and he said that it's very hard to face reality and look at it. And it's getting harder and harder. There are many stimuli that makes us look away from reality. We invent things that make us believe smoke screens. It's really hard to keep looking at reality. There's this writer from Austria who says this. There's a quote here. History, tells us many things, but there are no students for history. No one pays attention to what history is telling us. And I have another quote here from Horatius. This is another summary of illustration on the world that we live in. The quote says, if we don't dare to think by ourselves, there's nothing to do. We need to stop being programmed, and we need to focus on that very crude reality that we have. And we need to become influencers and to try to modify the way that young people live in so that we can create a world that is worth living. Well, why? Because we have started a geological era that is a new era, Anthropocene. Many students are studying the geological era and they never make it to climate change. We have a very broad and vast curriculum, but it doesn't reach it. There's a scientific certainty. The human activity in the planet, and even The Economist talks about this. We're talking about the Anthropocene. So we have started a new geological era, the Anthropocene, and in this geological era, humans and this economic model that is becoming the only economic model in the planet that turns everything into commodities. This is a process that, starting in the 15th century with the conquest of America, started expanding, and in the 20th century turned from industrial capitalism to consumerism capitalism. All barriers have been destroyed, and the way we are living is unsustainable from a natural and human perspective. So the most advanced scientists are publishing in different publications studies that say that the Anthropocene is a human stage where there is a minority species, humans, and this species becomes the central element in the planet. What this species is depleting everything. These scientists are publishing very, very interesting books that explain what the current situation is and how humanity created the Anthropocene, this new geological era. And as Marina Garcés, another great philosopher, says, I really recommend you to read her. She's great. She says that the difference with the past times is that there is no margin, there's no way out. In the old times, we could migrate to Cuba, to Algeria, to Australia, but we cannot do that any longer. The world has been fully explored, and there are no empty continents like in the 19th century. We know the planet. The planet is not infinite, and we are depleting the whole planet. And we are depleting resources in a very exaggerated way. And we have to go to the interior. I'm not talking about the spiritual interior. I'm talking about the interior of our society, of human beings. And in this process, education plays a very important role. We are going to talk about Vandana Shiva now, a great friend of ours. Vandana Shiva has been invited here by Guillem very often, and she wrote a great book called Earth Democracy. It has been translated to Spanish and to Catalonian. And she talks about 7 basic principles about what this Earth democracy should be like. It shouldn't only be a political and human democracy. She talks about such interesting things, such as what Satish was saying in his meditation. Everything is connected, everything is related. And she says that all species, all peoples, all communities, and all cultures have an intrinsic value. That's one of the principles. She also says that the Earth community is a democracy composed of all living beings. And there's something that I'm really interested in. Principle 7. Earth democracy is a living democracy, and we are going to connect this to schools. As I was saying, Earth democracy is a living democracy, and how does this relate to our schools? Well, this is a bottleneck for me in how schools work, and this applies to public as well as private schools. We hear a lot about leadership, empowering people, inspiring. This is very much in vogue. There are many courses on leadership, introduction to leadership, and there is this trend of leadership. This is a fashion, the fashion of leadership, and the message is the message, as Malujan said. Why is this interest in leadership? Because there are different basic leadership styles. We have the bureaucratic in Spain. We are specialists in bureaucracy. We turn things that are not a problem into a problem. And we see that in schools. Programs, schools, reports, and we have the autocratic style. We have the charismatic style. For example, if I'm the director, I believe that I'm someone important and I lecture everyone. And then we have the laissez-faire style, like a director, a manager who doesn't even step the schoolrooms. If families don't complain, I'm not going to do anything. And then we have the participatory leadership style, which is less and less present in our schools. But there are many teachers who want to do things, but the structure, the school structure, doesn't allow it because it's suffocating this possibility to participate. It's becoming more and more complicated to have groups of teachers where things can be done. I don't know that in Finland, the inspectors don't exist. And education in Finland is doing well, and they don't have this level of managing that works as inspectors. They don't have inspectors. So the teachers don't have to respond before other teachers, families, and students. No, teachers have to respond to inspectors. So there has been a true decrease in the capacity of participation of teachers. And many teachers don't dare speaking in their schools because they're afraid they won't keep their job the next year or that their hours will be increased. So there's a bottleneck here. As Vandana Shiva was saying, that the power should go to the community, to the educational community. We want that community to come back and because that community has been created. So who should teachers have to be accountable to? For example, in Catalonia, in the Balearic Islands, if you want to be the director of the school, well, it should be the other teachers who elect the director. It should be the other teachers, the families, and the students who choose the director. And this director should lose his or her position if they weren't able to manage the project properly in such a way that it favors students, families, and other teachers. But the situation now is not like that. Now, directors want to be in cahoots or in good terms with the politicians. Here, we need to emphasize something that Vandana said. And Cesar and other people who have talked here say that curriculum is not that important, especially at the level of obligatory education. Who remembers what you were learning in school when you were 11 or 14 years old? Do you remember what you studied in mathematics class when you were 11? No. What's important is that there's an environment that gets the most from the potential that educations have, that multiple intelligences. We should simplify curriculums. When we have a curriculum that is published in English, for example, in Finland, for example, in their curriculums, they said, well, a student who's 11-year-old, and they have, like, in a line, they summarize something that in Spain, in the Spanish curriculum, would be 11 pages. And these short curriculums means that I mean, all curriculums should be devoted for the specific communities. And that way, the families, the students, and the other teachers would be co-responsible of what is being taught. What we cannot do is to teach the curriculum and then additionally do holistic education. If you want a holistic education, you should be able to simplify your curriculum and to adapt it to your school or your educational community. We need to reduce the curriculum that is obligatory, and we should unfold different capacities, and the current educational system does not allow for this to happen. So where would this take us? There is an experiment in the Center for there's a center in California that is experimenting, and they have projects like this: Understanding Food and Climate Change and Interactive Guide. Food, for example, is a topic that is ignored in schools. We just need to see what is served in cafeterias in high school that just serve crops, so as to speak, but that's a word. That's what they are serving, and it's awful because we all drink and we all eat, and food is not considered a content. And so this could be a theme that could be covered in school, and it could be included in curriculum. In this California center, in this California school, they are doing very interesting things. I recommend you to look at it. They have many students from Mexico or from the south of California, so a lot of their content is in Spanish, and they explain how organic is good, but there's in addition to organic food, there's proximity. It's also important to eat food that comes from nearby. We are talking about relinking things, about having shorter curriculums that are more autonomous and curriculums that are more closely connected to the educational community. We need to connect things that we had forgotten about, and we need to foster an organic connection. And this is in line with water resources, etc. And we should also include the conditions in which, and the fact that students have to sit in desk. We should rethink all of this, and all of this should be rethought in schools, this organic connection. And we have a very clear picture here that it's a very clear example. It's a picture taken by an environmentalist in a park in London. This is a miracle, the miracle of nature. We have squirrel in a park in London, and this squirrel is flying on top of another species. So there are many different ways of collaborating. We're seeing an example of collaboration. We need to rediscover that organic connection. The second great element is the human connection. 7 billion people in the world, and in a country like Mexico, there are many countries where the gross population is being huge, and by the end of the century, probably there will be 9 billion people in the planet. Sometimes we ignore this fact. Our schoolrooms are being filled with diversity, and we are not paying attention to it. Racism, xenophobia are increasing in Europe, and this is a basic element that we should include in our curriculums. In all educational communities, educational communities should autonomously be able to include this fact, because this is something that's happening in Europe. We should have a curriculum of diversity in schools, but this is not going to happen the way things are. In Spain, there's being a loss of liberties. We're losing ground, and this is working in this field would be a life insurance in schoolrooms. For example, in the Balearic Islands, we are in the border. Barcelona is really I mean, we may believe that we are European, but we are in the border, and we want to prevent the world becoming the prey of xenophobia and racism. We need to see how what's very important in the schools is not only what happens inside the schoolrooms. Many more things can happen in the schoolrooms. For example, we could talk about fair trade. For example, the cafeteria could be a pedagogy area. The library could become a laboratory, not for entrepreneurial ideas. No, it should be a laboratory where students could research. In our research, in our school, we have seen students doing much more research than people who have 3 masters, and this can happen in primary schools. And primary schools could become spaces for meditation. And all this requires planning. We should be inclusive with our students since the beginning, because no matter how young our students are, they're always capable of doing things.
So within the schools, we need to create communities that are alive. Citizens should be alive and plural, and the schools also. The school is not an island. It's not this school, that institute. No, we're creating a living community, and the background idea of a pedagogical project that is alive should be co-opting families, students, teachers, all together to generate together schools that are alive, atmospheres where the youth can develop all of their capacities with a deeply democratic concept, brotherhood, sisterhood. And to finish off, the last idea I want to share is the question of what kind of student do we want? We want to have permanent apprentices. We need to be citizens of the world. And as Gabriel Garcia Marquez, this magnificent Colombian writer, says, an education needs to go from the cradle to the grave. It needs to inspire a new way of thinking, and it needs to lead us to discovering who we are. And in order to do that, there's no other choice but releasing energies, breaking down barriers, feeling free to create. Because if we don't feel free to create as teachers, to do things that are not included in the curriculum, that are not included in the legislation from the council, it's not just about having different dimensions and different competencies. It's going way beyond that. So walking through this valley of darkness of the educational system, we need to go deeper, and all the differences will be larger and larger and more disconnected. So I really encourage you to be creative for your whole career and your whole lives. Ursula Aram is not only a psychologist, but she will be sharing with us work that she's doing with the prevention and treatment of behaviors that involve risk. So risky behaviors. Good morning. I think it's a good symptom that on a Sunday morning, you find yourselves here in this room listening to these talks. I want to explain how we work, because the origin of our organization is very different to the work that we do nowadays. I will focus on the work we do with youth and with risk prevention, and that's something we've been doing since 2016. Due to the difficulties that new technologies present, that are new challenges for the families. And we receive all of these behaviors and consequences of these new technologies in this new world, speedy world that is being created. Proyecto Homo was born in the Balearics 20 years ago due to the heroin epidemic, and we were helping give response to that sort of problem, the heroin problem, the drug problem. We saw then many cases of death due to AIDS, and then the problem of drug consumption, addictions, etc., became something that people were more aware of. And so there was an analysis of the social situation that creates these kinds of problems. So that was 31 years ago that we were created. So we have been related, or in people's minds, associated with heroin addicts and recuperating heroin addicts, but actually we have been on the front line with the arrival of new addictions and new dependencies. We have 13 different projects, different programs in action that have to do with, that help people who have difficulties with the consumption of many things. Alcohol, drugs, destructured family profiles. For example, they have challenges in the family, challenges at work, who, for example, also consume cocaine. There's another program. We have one for adolescents. We have another one for people who have addiction problems, but who also have some kind of mental disorder as well. We have a program for methadone treatment in support to heroin addicts. So these are people who did consume heroin actively many years ago, but who have never actually desired to stop taking drugs altogether, but they still want to continue to take something. We also have a program in prison, attending people who have actually carried out crimes as a consequence of their drug consumption. And then we have a unit of diagnosis that are on all of different islands. From 2007, 2008, we have not only worked on treatments, but also we have started to work with prevention as a key area of work in order to prevent the consumption of drugs and other addictive substances. So we've been offering training to teachers all of these years, very basic training, more advanced training, workshops for mothers and fathers, for people who have conflicts in their styles of education as well. And also we do training for young adults and students from primary, secondary, and high school. We also have a residential program that is a family program aimed at kids that are between 10 and 16 years old who are in a state or private public school. There are three areas. We work with the families, the teachers, and the students. So we understand that drug consumption is a multi-factor problem. We want to identify the risk indicators. We want to protect. We want to give the young person their own tools and skills necessary to carry out a responsible life. The technician who works on prevention trains the teachers, and then the teachers in the classrooms throughout the tutorials. They do a number of activities, and they also give tasks and responsibilities to the families so that at home, mother or father work with the child, and then in the classroom, teachers will also be working together with the students and then with the families. So in the prevention program, we have the Break Your Mind program, which is aimed to people from 16 to 21. These tend to be people who are at risk of drug consumption or have already initiated drug consumption. Most of them are not yet consuming in an abusive way, but they could do in the future. They're vulnerable to it. So these are people who are in adult schools, professional training schools, they're in skill training programs. They're outside of the conventional mainstream education system and trying to do other things. So these are training groups. These are perhaps people who have a deficit in social abilities, who have destructured families, or who are at risk due to the friends that they have, the groups of friends, the peers, or how they use their free time. Often it's the teachers who detect these kids who have this risk of consuming substances, and often they are the ones who request help because often the family is either non-existent or it's disconnected from the education of the child or from the school. So this program involves a technician who trains as well. The teachers and the different group activities are carried out. And there's also technical advice is provided. In 2017, all of this prevention of drug consumption and alcohol consumption was actually not enough. The demand from the families and from the schools was larger than what we could provide, because nowadays there's new problems such as new technologies. If we think that more than 4% of under 25s have a problem with new technologies, and these are figures from 2017-18 from a national survey that was carried out, that is done in secondary schools and adult schools, asking about what use they make of substances and other drugs, but also new technologies. And so out of 1,000 students, we have 40 students who express problems with self-control of new technologies. This program is called Cyber Youth. It was initiated last year, and it attends people who are between 12 and 25, and these are families that feel misunderstood because they feel really embarrassed and shamed because they feel they have not been able to set limits to these little machines that invade their homes and that often the parents themselves use habitually, and they may even have 2 or 3 of these machines, and so they are ashamed to recognize or to accept that they have not been able to deal or prevent with this behavior from their children. We offer competencies for good use of technological material. Often they don't ask for help because of an abusive use, but because some kind of violent episode happens. For example, there's violence in the family when the father or the mother tries to stop the child from using the phone, or tries to take away the phone, or tries to take away the Wi-Fi connection at home, and suddenly there's an explosion, a violent explosion, sometimes insults or sometimes even worse. And that's when the families tend to ask for help, because they realize that something is going on that is not adequate. It's not so much because of the bad use of technologies, so we don't actually get called to prevent, but we get called in when there's a problem, where there's been an explosion, a violent explosion, and that's where we get called in. We shouldn't criminalize new technologies because we are in the era of new technology, but really we need to use them properly and teach kids so that they use them properly. We also find mothers and fathers who need to educate their kids, have to set the limits, but actually the kids nowadays have a lot more information and a lot more knowledge of new technologies than the parents do. So we need to show the parents the difference between a smartphone, an iPhone, what's the difference between a portable phone, a portable computer and an iPad and a laptop. We have to show them the difference between a tablet and an iBook. And of course, all of this information is necessary for them to be able to exercise their education as parents correctly. People who then there's all the whole difficulties with social networks, Twitter, Instagram, online betting, which is very accessible for underage people, because actually they can pretend to be somebody else. They can create an identity. You don't need to prove in any way that you're overage. All these online apps are a lot more accessible for adolescents who are underage than we think. Young people who have been through our program in the last year and a half tend to be of a high economic level. Their education has often been overprotective at home. And until the treatment begins, their school performance has been middle to high. How do we detect a problem here? For example, one issue is the time that is dedicated, what they do with their time. Youth can be 1 hour, 2, 3, 6 hours. Just because he's not on for very long doesn't mean that he's using the tools healthily. So it's not about time, it's about the use that they make in that time. So I shouldn't just say, oh, well, my kid is only on there for 1 hour, only allowed for an hour. You should be knowing what he's doing for that hour. You need to ask him or her, show me what you do. We also detect the problem of lack of self-control or loss of self-control. When the youth has set himself or herself a specific time and is not able to stop using the machine for themselves. They feel only 20 minutes have gone by, but actually it's been 3 hours have gone by. So that lack of control. Another indicator is the lack of verbal control. That is to lose control and get completely angry and shout when the connection is lost or the brother takes over the connection. They actually call themselves rat kids. Ask the adolescents around you whether they know what a rat kid is. They will know. And it is a child that anywhere, anytime is constantly connected or constantly looking at where they can find a Wi-Fi connection. It's a kid who cannot manage their emotions if they cannot get connected, if they can't find a Wi-Fi connection. Another problematic use indicator has to do with the things he or she has stopped doing in order to be connected. So activities that used to give them satisfaction, they're no longer interested in. Things that they stop doing. They sleep less. School performance drops. Sports are abandoned or their performance drops. Also school failure of underage kids who have taken their parents' bank card, for example, have gone online to do betting. And this is like some of the worst consequences here. So there's that lack or loss of self-control, abandonment of activities, and absolute need to be connected. Those are strong indicators. How can we prevent? We need to adequate the rules regarding the use of these technologies according to their real reality. What's their age and what real need do they have to manage certain apps and how much time should they dedicate on that, and accompany the young person in this process of learning to use things properly. Because young people think this has always existed, but we know that this is something new, that it wasn't always there. And so instead of just letting them do their thing because he's in his room and he's just doing his thing. No, actually to be next to them, to oversee. And if you have asked me to have a Twitter or Instagram account, then let's see how you're going to use it, what time you're going to dedicate to it, what you're going to talk about on there. Don't let the child the mobile phone or the tablet when he or she is bored or when he or she is angry in order to bring down the tension at home. So you let them use these technologies because I'm doing something. I'm having a drink with my friends. I'm having dinner. I'm making some dinner. And so in order to, my child, I'm having lunch with friends and the child is coming interrupting all the time. So I give them the phone just to keep them busy. So this is very contrary to proper use. Also, you need to promote interpersonal communication for adolescents to communicate with other people of their own age and of different ages. So adolescents do have difficulties in communication, but they need to feel listened to. They need to be loved and accepted, whatever it is they're saying. And so there needs to be real rules as to when and how long for they can use these technologies. And also, there needs to be spaces and times where there is no use, but both for the adolescents and the parents. And this is really important. So you need to, in a way, intervene in the family dynamics and the family habits, setting simple rules that are common sense. And for example, say, can we have the mobile phone in the bedroom or not? The computer, should it be in the dining room or not? So to agree with the adolescent at what times and what spaces it is appropriate or not. For example, saying, okay, let's agree to not use any of these machines while we're having food, while we're having lunch or dinner. But for the whole family, that same rule. Also, the register. There's an application here, an app, that registers the digital life of a person. So it tells you how many times that phone has been turned on, how many times you've gone into WhatsApp application, how many times you try to connect onto the internet. And for the parents, it really serves to have a control and knowledge of what the child is doing. And it also serves to help mothers, fathers, and children, all of them, to regulate the activity online. So also there's this WhatsApp catalog here, or set of rules of how to use it. And here's a couple of websites as well of interest to you all. These are the websites where you can find more information about these sorts of protocols. And there's a lot of information there about all the different tools that we have at our fingertips with all of these new technologies. And also it talks about cyberbullying and those kinds of problems. And there's also some basic concepts regarding drugs and other substances. And there's a training program about basic concepts to do with drugs on the 19th of October. And on the 26th of October, there's another course happening about use of new technologies. And there's the website where you can go and find that training. And when you sign up, she's giving all of the details of how to sign up to these courses. This is aimed especially at families, parents, teachers. They're very interesting courses, and these are the result of all these years of a lot of work that we've put into this to try and help the families walk through and transition through these times.
Project Aume, Balearic Islands, 30 years of history, and then goal to try to help people who want to get over their addictions. Hope, strength, support, clarity to see things. That's what Project OMA or MAN Project is about. My name is Rosa, and I came here because I was abusing sleeping pills. My life in these 3 years can be summed up in going to work, working, going to sleep, waking up in the morning, and going to work. And in this process, I lost my children, my social life, etc. This is a family, but we're never. I mean, we are on the same boat. And what is our objective? What port are we looking for? Getting over it and getting out of this world that we decided we ourselves embarked on. My name is Manel. I'm 46 years old, and I started abusing substances when I was very young. When I was 26, I started using cannabis, and it got worse and worse, and I ended up using everything. I was about to lose my life. I was about to lose I could have lost my partner, my daughter. I could have even killed someone. And here, they gave me my back life. They helped me remember what my parents had taught me. For me, it's like if you fall inside a well, and then you see the light and you know that you're going to get out of that well. My name is Maria Vera, and I joined the Proyecto Hombre because of a bad chance. My son had a bad experience with drugs, and he decided to join Proyecto Hombre. And in 2008, I started working here as a volunteer, because I realized that one of the very few ways that I had to give back to this place was to help in what I could. We have to think that consumers or users live in constant war. And as you start working and as you start doing things well, things start to work out. Many people say that they have recovered illusion and excitement for life, and the path was worth it. Here I found great support. I found this family, and I found many mothers and fathers who were in my same situation. I love myself more. I try to look good, and I have removed things from my life. Sorry, bad things, but negative things from my life. And the last person says, I have recovered everything. In 30 years of Balears project, there has been coherence, honesty, family, overcoming, transparency, effort. 30 years of life, 30 years of recovering life.
Bueno, el próximo invitado
Our next speaker
para nosotros es especial
is
porque
very special
hace
for
4
us
años cuando
because
nos
4 years ago when we
nos
met,
dimos cuenta
we
enseguida
realized
que
instantly
había un amigo, un hermano.
that he was a friend, that we had met
Ahora
a
mismo
friend, a
no
brother.
puedo imaginar
So I
este
can't
encuentro sin
imagine this gathering without César Bona. Good morning, everyone. It's a true pleasure to be here again. Yesterday, we were already talking a little bit. I want to start by thanking Guillén and the whole team that brings us here together every year. And I want to congratulate Joan because I thought that I found his presentation very, very necessary and very, very interesting. And I'm really happy to complement here what Joan said and what the people in Project Hombre, in Man Project said. Often we have things in front of our eyes and we don't pay enough attention to those things. I'm going to talk about journeys that I have done and the stories of people that I have encountered in these journeys. I was fortunate to be where I am now, and I am where I am now through these people and because of these people. So the thread of what I'm going to tell is going to be people and stories. Some months ago, I was in Mexico and I was talking to an anchor who was telling me the story of her son Bruno, who was 4 years old. And this TV anchor told me that there was a new girl who had a Down syndrome who joined the school. And to know what the reaction of my son was to this new girl, I asked him, Bruno, how was your day at school? And my son said, very well, Mom. And I was trying to get information, get more information and making more questions. And I said, oh, is there any new girl in the school? And he said, yeah, there's a new girl and we're friends. And I said, and what's she like? What's that new girl like? And he said, well, I mean, we're friends. I've told you, don't be insistent. And I said, and she said, sorry, is she special? And he said, of course she's special. Of course, we're all special. If we didn't have something special, our moms wouldn't know who we were when we picked up from the school. And let's look around us. I want you to do that literally. Let's look around us and realize, let's think that everyone, we are all special. Everyone has something that's different from the others. We are different in terms of our fears, our concerns, our excitements, what ticks us. There are almost 8 billion people in the world, as Joan said, and there are no two people who are equal. So we need to change the perception that we have of the world and of the people that we have around us. There's a quote by Big Dodo that says, it's not what you look at, but what you see. And I think we should think about that the whole time. We are equal before the law, and we are equal in terms of rights, but we are all different, and that's the true wealth, the true richness. So being different is a value and not an inconvenience. I studied magisterio, like pedagogy, and before that I studied English philology, and before that I went to school, and before that I went to elementary school. So I studied for 16, 18 years, and during those years, no one ever taught me anything about differences and how to deal with differences, how to understand them. In these years as a teacher, I have taught many contents, Latin, English, language, but no one taught me anything about the relationships that we have to each other as human beings. We work with groups of people, but no one taught us anything about how to manage or deal with groups of people. But that's what we are here for in this meeting. Because before we start educating others, we need to connect to ourselves. And to connect to ourselves, we need to reflect. And reflect means that you are an example for them every day, and that every gesture you make is going to have an impact in many people's lives. So my question is, I wish we could talk on a one-to-one basis, but I would ask you, how do you manage your frustration? How do you manage your rage? Because when you get mad, you close all the channels and you're not listening, and then you need 5 minutes or 5 days, who knows, for that to go away. How do you manage your fears? Maybe my fear may be ridiculous to yours or the other way around. What am I trying to say with this? I want to say that we can get trained in cooperative learning and in improving our mathematics skills, but before that, what's crucial is to stop and get to know yourself. And that's how you can take the first step to understand that you are part of a group. And what we're doing here is to learn how to coexist. So once we know each other, then we may be able to demand things from others, but only then. But we can only demand we cannot demand as long as we don't know each other and we're willing to give. As you know, education, life, family are indivisible. We cannot talk about one of each aspect without touching upon the other. I traveled to Colombia, and I was being interviewed by Claire Winstop, a filmmaker who made the film Amazona. And I was interviewing her, and I was looking at her, and I was thinking, everything starts with education. And I was thinking about her teachers. I was thinking about her family. And I was thinking, maybe at some point, someone taught her, you're crazy. What are you trying to do? You're trying to become a filmmaker. Maybe someone told her that. And maybe some other person said, persevere, fight for what you want for. And maybe some other person told her, you're being naive. And there she was. She was a filmmaker. Our influence is huge. As our influence as teachers, and well, if you're a teacher, a mother, or a father, your impact is huge. And as Joan said, we are influencers, and every word, every gesture that we make has an impact. And some time ago, I was in La Cañada, which is an area in Madrid where drugs are dealt with. It's a slum in Madrid. So I was traveling by car, and I was looking for stories of children, of teenagers, that revealed that that neighborhood, that slum, is more than a place where drugs are dealt with. So I was driving my car in a road, and I could see that there were fires on both sides. Every fire was a place where drugs were sold. And around me, there were many people who didn't even know where they were going, zombies. And from one fire and the next, there were children and teenagers walking, or who were walking or playing. And I interviewed 2 boys and 1 girl. And when I arrived to my hotel, I usually travel by my own. I couldn't talk to anyone, so I was thinking, and I kept pondering about my experience in that slum. And I got out of the shower, and I was reflecting out loud. And I thought, how can I tell any child that they cannot make it? When did the school became the judge to decide who stays in and who doesn't stay in school, who passes a school year and who doesn't pass a school year? Who am I to decide that? So this is in connection with all the prejudices that we have. We have expectations on ourselves, expectations about others, and others have expectations of ours. There are social expectations too. Who among you are parents? Who is a parent here? One of the most beautiful moments as a parent, I guess I don't have children yet, I just have a cat. But maybe one of the most beautiful moments is when you hear, oh, it's going to be a girl or it's a boy. Then you start creating expectations, and your dreaming mode starts working. And you have expectations, but then often things are not the way you expected. And that's great, because otherwise our children will be clones. And fortunately, individuality comes to place. Also, if you chose to be a teacher, one of the most special experiences is when you go inside you step in your classroom and you realize this is going to be my class, these are my students, and you touch the desks and you start having expectations about what your students are going to be like. I hope that the classroom is good. What would be a good class? We would have to define that. What's a good class? Because maybe a good class would be a class full of inverted commas, special or difficult children who are going to challenge you, and that's going to be a good class, a class that challenges you. It's good that people have expectation, because if people didn't have any expectations of you, it would be terrible. No one has any expectations of me, and that would be terrible. But as long as those expectations don't put pressure that is too overwhelming, expectations really affect our relations with others. We tend to look through our eyes, and we forget to try to look at others, to look at things through others' eyes. There's something that has happened to me a number of times. Have you ever heard a teacher saying, that student wants to make it, that student can make it, but he doesn't want to make it? Have you ever heard that? When I look back in time, I can see myself when I was 14, focusing on my notebook, first year high school, and I was thinking, I want to make it. I want to get this. But no matter how hard my parents encourage me, no matter how hard the teacher wants to teach me, I can't make it. I cannot do this. And this became an emotional issue. I sort of like got blocked in a way. And when I became a teacher, sometimes when I was tutoring and maybe in meetings with parents, I have repeated that sentence to a parent. Your son or daughter can make it, but doesn't want to make it. We tend to reproduce what we see, and we tend to reproduce beliefs. So something that had been an issue for them and that I had suffered, I repeated that to a parent. So we tend to repeat the patterns in which we were educated. And as Joan was saying, society has those values that are very doubtful, like competitiveness, Instagram showing perfect bodies that are impossible to achieve. So schools reproduce society. We can see schools as a reproduction of society, or schools as a tool for transforming society. And if we are here, it's because we believe that schools can transform society. We have the certainty that there are some things in society that we can change through schools. And in line with this, schools always needs to give opportunities and should not be a place where it is decided what is good and what is not good. We should think of schools as something that gives tools. We sometimes don't realize, but this ever-revolving fast world, children are the projection of their parents, and their parents are the projection of society. And sometimes it's the youngest who pay for all the problems. I visited a school some months ago, and a mother who was walking very fast on the sidewalk in a very... she was walking too fast, and there was a 4-year-old girl hanging from her arm. She was walking so fast, and the girl caught her hand hard and said, "Mom, please breathe. Mom, breathe, stop." She was walking so fast that her daughter had to tell her that. I gave a conference in the University of Jaén. I was talking to future teachers, and at nighttime, I was having dinner with the teacher who had organized the conference and his wife. And they told me, we have a 7-year-old son, and we want him to learn many things. We want him to make it. So we signed him on to this activity, this other activity, to many activities. And a couple of days ago, before dinner, he came to talk to us in the kitchen and said, "Mom, Dad, please give me some free time. a 7-year-old. A 7-year-old want to have some free time. And this takes me to another traveling time. I had a conversation with another father in Madrid, thought that I knew everything, and he said, what do you do when your son has a piece of meat in his mouth for half an hour? And I was like, I don't know, my cat does that too. And I thought of my answer. And I thought, maybe you should learn from your son, because he is exercising mindfulness. He's really enjoying that bite of meat, savoring it. Although maybe what it happens is that you live in such a vertigo, you have so many things to do throughout the day, you try to influence your whole family. Instead of saying, this is a safe place, I'm fine here, I'm going to disconnect from everything that I was doing all day long, and I'm going to enjoy my son, my wife. I had a conversation with Pablo Fernández de Rocal, an expert in emotions, and we had a very interesting conversation about the challenges of the young people that we work with. The number of teenagers who live with stress is increasing, and we're talking about social and emotional stress. And that's just the outcome of the life that adults live. Between 10 and 25% of children in school are suffering burnout. Teenagers in schools, they're burnt out. And these numbers equal the numbers of adults in terms of amount and intensity. And this is happening in schools and high schools that are aimed at making them better people. And with this, this takes me to another journey, a journey to Lima. I was in Lima, in Peru. I was going to give a conference, and I was invited to a restaurant by the beach. I was talking with two of the organizers, and I saw this, what you're seeing here. And I said, wait a second. I got my camera, and I left. I forgot about the food, and I spent 15 minutes taking pictures at this image. Father and child getting stones and throwing these stones to the sea. And the father, they would throw one stone, and then they would compete to see who would throw the stone farther. And I said, well, there was nothing more important for that father at that moment than what they were doing. And I was contrasting that with my experiences and the things that I had lived and that I have been telling you about. I have had all these conversations with many people. I have traveled to Barcelona, to Manresa, to Lima in Peru. I usually don't talk much. I tend to listen more. I'm talking a lot here because that's what I was invited for. Something that really draws my attention is that many people that I talk to mentioned the same word, which is failure. Failure. And that made me think about what this word means and what the word success means. How many people have we looked at in such a way that we thought of them as potential failures? And how many people that we thought of as potential failures overcame that? And how many people not only overcame that failure, but helped others overcome failure? Aidan Benavides is a boy from the U.S. who suffered bullying, and bully is equated to social failure. He created a website he overcame it and created a website to help other children or teenagers who are suffering bullying. I got together with a business person, and I got together with this business person, and he started saying, hey, we're going to do this and the other, and I had this idea. In a minute, he told me 1,000 ideas, and we were having lunch, and I couldn't process everything and have lunch. And he said, and I said, what were you like when you were a child? And he said, well, I was hyperactive. I had attention deficit disorder. And I realized everything. So what I'm trying to say is that in schools, in high schools, we have to show that there's not one single way out, one single thing to do, that there are many different ways out and things to do. because there are many different types of people. Success. Success is usually connected to material prices. And success is a social construct that can be understood in many different ways. It can be connected to achievements. Achievements are neither big or small. Maybe for one person, going by yourself to buy bread is an achievement. Or, for example, with the case of Aiden, feeling safe because you have been the victim of bully, that's a success, feeling safe. Or changing a situation where there were some expectations about you and changing the situation regardless of those expectations can be a success. Success is connected to human aspects. There are always prejudices. We all have expectations, and we have histories of success that, for me, are connected to resilient, about human dignity, the gift of life. We have all been witness of these stories, our students, people that are around us. I'm going to tell you about 2 or 3 people that I have been fortunate to meet. The first story is very short, and it's the story of Dorian's smile.
I had traveled to Tenerife to speak to adolescents about bullying and about respect. And after the talk, somebody from the organization, who was about 30-something, whose name was Dorian, said, "Oh, this has made me remember my times as a child. I'm going to tell you the story." And this is his story, Dorian's story. Every time I was told off by the teacher, I used to laugh. And she would get more and more angry. And the angrier she got, the more I would laugh, Dorian said. She would get more and more angry until I got kicked out of the classroom. I got to a point of hating school deeply, just because of this teacher who was never able to understand me. Because every time she told me off, I got nervous, and the laughter was a nervous laughter. That was my reaction, my nervous reaction. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't speak. I could just giggle. And she never understood this. So it was constant punishment. And since then, I hate school. Another story is the story of the lizard. I was told this story in Mexico by a teacher of young, small children who had told the story to her children in the classroom, and the star of the story was a lizard. After the story, they were about 4 years old, the kids, and she said, "Okay, now draw a lizard." And a boy comes up to her and says, "I don't know how to draw a lizard." And she, in order to encourage him, said, "So how old are you?" 4. So she took a book by chance and opened it up and said, "At 4 years old, children know how to draw a lizard," and said that to him. "Go on then." And the kid goes back to his table, sits down, spends the whole hour thinking what he's going to do because he has to hand something in at the end of the class. And when it was time to hand it in, he gave her a page like this, all full of stripes and things, all brown. And the teacher said, "But I told you to draw a lizard and that 4-year-olds can draw them." And he said, "Well, it's there." And she said, "I don't see it." And she said, "Yeah, it's under the soil." "The lizard is under the soil," said the little boy. Another story is this. The teacher and the moon. This happened in Barcelona. I'd given the talk, and I was signing books, and there was a girl in the line, and there's a girl who came and who is a dwarf. And she came up to me and said, "Look, I'm going to tell you my story, César." And I listened. She said, "Since I was a child, I had always wanted to be a teacher. But I came across so much teasing along the way, and so many people laughing at me for that dream, is that I didn't dare. And for 15 years, I've been working in a company, in a little box where no one can see me. But I thought, if I want to change things, I can't expect others to change them for me. So I'm going to make the decision, leave this job, and start to study to become a teacher," which she did. When she finished university, She began teaching in a school, and she got one of these difficult girls in her classroom. And she was thinking, oh, I have to really try and get this girl, connect with her and get her out and stuff. And by the end of the year, this girl wrote a letter to her. And there was a drawing like this. It was a moon with the craters drawn and stars. And this is what it said on this letter that this adolescent had written to her dwarf teacher. You can reach the moon if you want, and underneath a really tiny ladder with a really tiny lady. And in the letter, this adolescent said to her, I want you to know that of all the people that I've met, I think you're the only one who has actually understood me ever. This is a beautiful story of how we need to struggle against our demons sometimes, and we can't expect somebody else to change things. You need to be the one who makes the steps that are necessary to change things. So these are a few examples that I've wanted to share with you. And what have I learned from all of this? That when you really know someone, prejudices disappear. That we need to ask ourselves many questions, but we need to ask more questions even to the kids and adolescents who are with us in order to get to know them. That school is not a bubble. It's a place where we must also learn to live in society. It is the best place, in fact, to help the families learn to educate their children. I've also learned that school, high school, need to be places that are as close as possible to being at home. That at home, we need to select amongst many of important things, the ones that are really important. I've learned that all children and adolescents have something that all human beings have, which is the desire to feel loved, the desire to be listened to, the desire to feel useful. And I've learned that there's many treasures that are hidden and that appear when we change the way we look at things, or when we dedicate time to listening. And now I will finish, because we've talked about success and failure. Yesterday I had a conversation with someone who I love very much and who last year looked after me very much last year. And we were talking about success and failure. And I've brought the definition of success, according to Ralph. What is success? Is getting the respect of intelligent people and the love of children, appreciating the beauty of nature in everything that surrounds us, searching and finding the best in others, giving the gift of yourself to others without expecting anything in exchange, because it is as much that what you will receive is as much as what you will give. To carry out a task like saving a soul, healing a child, risking your life for a child, writing a book, to celebrate your life, to laugh, sing, and just let go, to have hope even in times of despair, because while there's hope, there's life, to love and be loved, to be understood and understand, to know that someone has been a little happier because you were alive. That is the meaning of success. And that is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's time to have a break, and I will explain. Llewellyn is a DJ who lives here on the island in Deya, and he has created a concept which he calls Wake Up Dance. And this began in Deya, and it's now traveling or going to other villages in Mallorca. And the idea behind Wake Up Dance is to create a space where people can dance, enjoy good music. And it's for people who like electronic music and DJs and stuff like that, but to enjoy that music with a very simple idea, which is no drugs, no alcohol, no cigarettes, and just in the daytime, and without even speaking to each other. just dance and listen to yourself and let yourself go. So for 45 minutes, more or less, we will do that. Everyone who wants to, outside, will have a little dance. And then we'll have a little rest and come back here. Thank you very much. So, time to dance.